Hello, you're listening to the Career Changemaker podcast. Having the courage to leave a career that you have worked hard to build and try something else can be tough. So in each episode, we dive into key career change strategies so that you have a clear understanding of what is required to transition into a new role or a new industry without feeling like you have to start at the bottom or have to take a massive pay cut. Because ain't nobody got time for that. If you are ready for frank and honest discussions about how to become a career change maker, keep listening. I'm your host, lawyer turned career strategist and executive coach, Janine Esbrand. Hello, and welcome to the show. As you may know, if you're a regular listener to the show, we recently hit 250 episodes of the Career Changemaker podcast. And I will tell you that it snuck up on me. We've been getting really good at our workflow and me batch recording episodes to make sure that the team can get episodes out to you guys on a regular basis. And so it wasn't until we got to the end of our last batch run and I was planning for the next one that I said, hold on a minute. Are we actually approaching 250 episodes? Crazy to me. And what I wanted to do in this episode was just take a minute to pause and reflect. And for anyone who's listening to this who is used to just going and achieving and then going on to the next goal and the next goal, take this as your reminder, as your invitation, as your encouragement to take a pause. Can we just take a pause? So often we just gloss over accomplishments, we just gloss over what we achieve and minimize it and don't take the time to really recognize not only what you've achieved, but who you've become in the process, who you've become as a person on the journey to achieving your goal. And so I was like, do you know what? I'm going to record a podcast episode and just reflect on what I have learned from recording 250 episodes and running this podcast for over 5 years. I won't go into all of the ins and outs because I'll be here all day, but I'm going to highlight some of the key learnings that I have had as a podcaster. So where do I start? Let me start with the beginning of the podcast and how it even came about in the first place. So when I first started my business, I had no idea what I was doing. This is back in 2016. And I remember taking a course about business development and teaching how you can run an online business. And at the time my son was a baby and I wanted most of my work to be done remotely because it would just make it easy logistically. So I joined this online course. It was Marie Forleo's B School, and one of the modules in there talked about marketing, and it talked about having a consistent marketing channel that you would publish content to on a regular basis. One of those options was a blog, and I was like, okay, a blog. I like writing, so let me try that. So I tried that. And very quickly, I realized that it took me a lot longer to write things down in a blog format than it did for me to say things. And in addition to writing things down, I would also need to then go and find a graphic to go with the blog and think of a title that was SEO optimized, and I would need to think about updating the website, and it felt like there were lots of steps. And then I came across podcasting, and at that time it wasn't as big as it is now. There weren't as many podcasts, there weren't so many people listening to podcasts, but I came across podcasting, and given that I'm somebody who loves to talk, I was like, this makes sense. Rather than me trying to write something out, which is taking me a long time, how about I just speak it? If I can just speak it and record it and then publish it, it's going to be so much easier and quicker. And so really that's how the podcast was born. I was looking for a way to get my voice out there and reach my potential customers and clients, and podcasting seemed like a good opportunity. It seemed like an easier option. Came to find out that it pretty much was the same amount of effort as doing a blog, if not more, especially in the early days when I was editing myself and doing the whole shebang, like recording, editing, making my own website, publishing. It was a lot. It was a steep learning curve. I'm grateful for all the lessons that I learned, but yeah, it was not sustainable. So of course, now we outsource some of the things when it comes to podcast production. But that's where the podcast really started, and it had a different name when we started. It had a different focus. We've had 3 iterations of the podcast at this point. The current one that you listen to really came about in the pandemic in 2020, when I was focusing on really listening to my clients and the people that I was working with and the people that I was speaking to, and recognizing the thread amongst the people who were looking for support was all around making career transitions and understanding how to make a change, deciding what type of change you wanted to make, being equipped with the tools to make the change. And so that's where Career Change Makers came about, and we doubled down on that and have experienced huge growth since then in terms of the podcast, the downloads, the number of countries that people listen to the show from, the amount of feedback that we get from our listeners to say that the podcast has been really helpful for them in making decisions and transitions. And so it's all been very, very exciting. The journey that I started upon, I didn't know where it was going to go. I didn't recognize that we could still be here 250 episodes or more than 250 episodes later, sharing content that is impacting people around the world. And I am very grateful, very, very grateful for the opportunity. One of the highlights for me as a podcaster has been the opportunity to meet so many people, have so many conversations, whether that is guests coming on our show or me being on other people's shows. So many conversations, so many connections, so much opportunity has come from networking that happens because of the podcast. And I'm so happy about the amount of people that I've been able to meet, chat to, connect with through this podcast. So yeah, that's just a little bit of backstory, me reflecting on the journey that we've been on. But here are some of the lessons. So the first is linked to what I just shared around how the podcast has grown, but it is that you learn as you go. If I had waited until I understood all that I understand now to get started with podcasting, I wouldn't have started. I started and just got things going, got things out there, did the best that I could with what I knew and what I had, and it has grown over time. And I think so often when we are wanting to do something, we hold ourselves back because we feel like we don't have enough understanding, enough resource, enough courage in order to take that step and do it. But podcasting has taught me that you absolutely learn and grow as you go. But even as you are learning and growing, you're still creating value for other people. And for those of you who are thinking about moving into new roles and new opportunities, but you're fearful as to whether or not you'll be able to really give the role all that you need to give it or do it justice, just know that you showing up with your expertise, whatever that looks like, your background, your blend of experience, you showing up with a level of dedication and commitment means that even as you're learning, you're going to be adding value. And mastery of anything can only come through doing the thing over and over and over again. We can't skip the steps. So if you want to get good at something, start, fail fast, learn quickly, move on, grow. That's my lesson number 1. You learn as you grow, so just start. Lesson number 2 is you can change and adapt as you go. So I mentioned that the podcast has had 3 iterations. I was able to decide on the iterations and what needed to happen based on feedback that I was getting from my audience and from other people and what I was listening to in terms of what was going on for people. I had to do that as I went along, and it was okay. It was okay to change. It was okay to say, hey, this is what we're doing now, change things up. Nothing is set in stone. Sometimes we approach our decision making as though it is the final decision and we have to make the right choice right now. Otherwise, it's all going to be terrible. And actually, just make the decision that you need to make for now and know that you can change your mind. Like, we are adults. The beauty of being an adult and having autonomy around your decisions is that you get to change your mind and say, actually, this isn't what I want to do anymore, or I'm deciding to do something different. And that, my friend, is absolutely okay. Third lesson, and this is a big one actually, it is that you never know who is paying attention to what you're doing. So keep showing up. And this is particularly relevant when you run a podcast, right? Because I'm sitting in my living room right now. My family is in bed. Most of them are sick. I'm the only one standing who's still well and hasn't been struck down by sickness. And I have my microphone here, I have my laptop on my lap, and I am recording a podcast that is going to go out to people all around the world. I don't know who these people are. I don't know who you are. Maybe I do. If you've reached out to me before and we've connected, or if you're a current client or a past client, I may know you. But otherwise, if we've never connected, you're listening to me and I don't know that you're listening. I don't know where you're listening. Are you driving? Are you washing the dishes? Are you playing with your kids with this playing in the background? Are you going on a walk, going on a run? I don't know. What are you doing? I will not know unless you let me know, right? So what I've come to realize through bumping into people who listen to the podcast or having people email me is that I just don't know. I just don't know who's listening. I just don't know who's paying attention. So if I was to rely on me getting feedback to determine whether or not I continued, I might be like, well, what's the point? I'm only hearing from a handful of people about their interaction with the podcast, so maybe I'll just stop. But actually, when I think about the fact that it's being downloaded thousands of times around the world on a weekly basis, then I say, okay, there are people listening and I just don't know. I don't know who's listening. And I've had multiple occasions over the years where somebody who has listened to the podcast has reached out to me and said, hey, I want to be a client of yours. Or somebody who's listened to the podcast has said, hey, come to our organization and deliver some training or a talk or some corporate coaching. Before I had the conversation with the person, I didn't know that they were listening to the show. This has taught me is if you have something to share, if you have a perspective, if you have a message, if you want to serve people, keep showing up as though nobody is listening or nobody is watching, because people are. You just don't know it. And I think when you are working in, say, the corporate setting, or even if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening to this, you may be showing up and doing things and it feels like nothing's happening. You may be giving it your all. You might be putting in the time. You might be really going above and beyond. And it may feel that people are not looking or listening, paying attention. But trust me, they are. They are. People are paying attention. And so don't allow what seemingly appears to be a lack of acknowledgement or interest stop you from showing up. Keep doing what you're doing, keep showing up. I remember going to a birthday party shortly after lockdown. I think it was the first birthday party after the restrictions during lockdown was lifted. And I was at this party. My children were not with us, so it was just my husband and I, and we were able to just chat to everybody, catch up with everybody. And I remember having a conversation with someone and I could feel somebody looking at me. And you know when you feel someone looking at you, you just turn and catch their gaze. And this lady came up to me and said, "Are you Janine Esbrand?" And I was like, "Yes." "Why?" And she's like, "I knew it was you. I knew it was you. I told my husband it was you. I've been listening to your podcast for months and it's been so helpful to me. Thank you so much. I would love to talk about working with you." And ultimately, long story short, she became a client in my program. She got incredible results. She's transformed her career and she's just brilliant, right? But what blew my mind was that this person had been listening to the podcast for months and was a friend of a friend, and we didn't even know that. And so I just thought to myself, had I not been showing up, she wouldn't have listened to the podcast, she wouldn't have had that experience, then she wouldn't have joined my program, and then she wouldn't have had the transformation in her career. Or at least not in this way, right? I hope this is an example for you as to why it's important for you to keep showing up. And if you're not really showing up right now, start showing up. Get your plan together. Think about your visibility and how you can be really positioning yourself so that you get noticed by the right people. The other lesson that I want to share, so this is lesson 4. So the first is you learn as you go. The second is you can change and adapt. The third is you never know who's paying attention. And then the fourth lesson that I want to share with you today is that what comes easy to you doesn't always come easy to others. What comes easy to you doesn't always come easy to others. Sometimes we can minimize and overlook the impact of our natural talents and our strengths, that are God-given abilities, because they feel so easy. they feel so easy. So for me, talking is easy. Like I used to get in trouble at school for talking. I love talking. It's like one of my favorite things to do. And so just turning on the mic and recording this podcast is easeful to me. I don't have a script. I have like 4 bullet points in front of me and I'm just chatting and sharing my perspective. I know that there are other podcasters that I've collaborated with and worked with that will tell me that they will write out a whole script before they record anything. That's not me. We are not scripting these episodes. We are just rolling. I am just sharing, and it just feels good to me and easy and enjoyable. So when I realized that that's how I do it and how I approach it, but that's not how everyone else does it, it helps me to acknowledge that there's a skill set that I've been blessed with that I can leverage, right? I can prepare for some things, but I don't have to prepare in the same way that other people need to prepare, or it doesn't have to be as, the script doesn't have to be as detailed. Like I'm really good at having the ideas, speaking off the cuff and connecting the dots as I speak. And I want to encourage you to figure out what is your thing, what is easable to you that is challenging for other people. Those natural abilities that you have are things to be celebrated and are things to be leveraged. If you're not currently leveraging your natural skill sets, start doing that, because that will allow you to do is achieve your goals with more ease and more quickly. So I could have stuck with it, right? I could have been like, no, blogging is the way to go. Back when I started my podcast, podcasts were not as popular, but blogging was very popular. Blogging was the thing. I could have been like, no, if I'm doing this, I need to figure out the blogging thing. Absolutely could have done that, but I wouldn't have created 250 episodes. I probably wouldn't have got to 250 articles on the blog because it was a lot of work for me. It felt like a lot of work. And so what outcome are you trying to achieve, and how can you get there by leveraging your natural preferences, by leveraging your natural strengths? My goal was to share my message, to market my business, to attract clients, and I've been able to do that through the podcast. I could have done that through the blog, but the podcast made more sense for me and my personality type and just what I'm good at. So I want you to make sure that you're thinking about what that is for you when you're facing your goals or setting your goals for where you want to go next in your career. What's the best path for you to take? Sometimes we can be very formulaic and cookie cutter, as they say, and just like, okay, in order to get to X, you need to do Y. But know that there's always new people who are forging the path and doing things in a different way, and then they become the people that other people tend to follow later on. Like, forge your own path, figure out your own way of getting to the result that you desire. So those are the 4 things. I feel like I've been talking for a long time, but it's okay. It's okay. I like to talk, as I told you. So you're learning as you go. You are acknowledging that you can change and you can adapt. You never know who is paying attention, so you keep showing up and recognize that what comes easy to you doesn't come easy to others. Those are the ones that are top of mind for me. So here's where we're at, though. I wanna share with you, as my lovely listeners, with the fact that we're at this milestone of 250. There is a saying that says, what got you here will not get you there. And now that we've hit this milestone of 250, I'm really thinking about what we do next with the podcast. I'm excited about what we're going to do next with the podcast and how we're going to amplify the reach and make sure that there are more people hearing the show and that can be impacted by what we share here. So we're going to take a little hiatus, a little break for a few weeks while myself and the team regroup and just figure out how we can make sure, one, we are maximizing all of the amazing content we've already shared with you. Some episodes from back in the day you may not have heard, some episodes from last year you may not have heard. There's some juicy nuggets and content that we have produced, but there's opportunity for us to share it more. So we're thinking about how we keep sharing what we've already been creating. And then we're also thinking about how we're going to do things moving forward. We are contemplating doing a video version of the podcast, so getting our YouTube channel optimized so that we can be sharing in audio and video. We're thinking about how we can connect more with our listeners. There is a new function that is called fan mail that is available through our podcast host that we're exploring so that we can connect with you. We're thinking about how we can take questions from the audience that I can bring and answer on the show. Like, there's so many things that we are exploring. If you have ideas for what you would like to see on the podcast, do reach out to us at podcast@careerchangemakers.com. We love to hear from you, love to hear your recommendations. But yeah, we're going to be taking a bit of a break, so look out for some rerun episodes that may well be coming down the pipeline. Make sure that you are going back into the archives and picking up what we've been putting down, because there's so much content around changing your career, shifting your mindset, going for promotion, getting visible on LinkedIn, networking, so many episodes. So make sure that you go and check out careerchangemakers.com wherever you listen to your podcast, and scroll back through the archives and see if there's anything that you have missed that could be helpful for where you are right now in your journey. And if you've been listening to the show and you hear me talk about the programs that we run and the work that we do, and you are ready and you would like to get some support with your career development, your career advancement, or you work with an organization and you want to bring myself and my team in to support your team with people development initiatives, then reach out to me. Send me an email at Janine@careerchangemakers.com. Let's have a conversation about how I might be able to support you. All right, that's all from me today. We will be back with another episode very soon. So watch this space. If you have enjoyed this recap, this lessons learned type episode, let me know. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me an email. Let me know what has been the most helpful from this episode. The more I get feedback from you guys, the more I can tailor content that is gonna really support you around what you're looking for and what you need. All right, I've said enough. Until the next episode, look after yourself and keep moving towards your career goals. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe to the show so that you don't miss any future episodes. Also, I would love to know what your biggest takeaway has been from today's episode. Come over and join us in our Career Changemakers community over on LinkedIn so that you can join the conversation there. Head over to lightbotscoaching.com/community and it will take you right to the group.